Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Straight Up With Steph. Today, I'm interviewing the creator and founder of the very first electric flosser called Floss. You may have seen this online. She's been on Shark Tank and the live show with Mark and Kelly, also been mentioned in like Time Magazine and Oprah and Goop. It was really fun to interview someone who's created something completely brand new, created her own category of electric flossers, and I'm just amazed at the fact that she is not a dental clinician. She's a lawyer, but she took her own personal experience and her issues with traditional floss and addressed those issues when creating the very first electric flosser. And I think for us as dental clinicians, especially if you've been practicing a while, maybe you've forgotten what it's like to be a patient, or maybe you've forgotten what it's like to not have this high dental IQ that a lot of us have. I think because we as clinicians know so much about teeth and really preach, to our patients what they should be doing, whether or not that's realistic for that patient. And for her, traditional floss was not realistic. And so that's why she created something that is more realistic and usable for her, and obviously a lot of other people because it's gotten so popular. So we talked about these pain points that patients have that we may or may not know about, and how she used those to create Floss. We talk about how it works, the environmental impacts that this has, and also how dental clinicians can start using this themselves or bringing it into their office. When we're talking about patient care and especially recommending different things to our patients, we've got things that we know work, like we know traditional flossing works. However, it's very technique sensitive. Some people aren't willing to learn that technique. They don't want to put their fingers in their mouth. Maybe the floss breaks because they've got really tight contacts. So having different options for them besides traditional floss that they're actually going to use is huge. This was a really fun conversation for me. I hope that it is for you too. So enjoy this conversation I have today with Sam of Floss. Hey, it's Steph, and welcome to the Straight Up With Steph podcast, where we have real discussions around health and life and just trying to be better at both. Hello, Samantha or Sam. How are you today?
I'm doing so good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm really excited that we finally got this. I know it's been a little back and forth with our schedules and stuff, but I've really been looking forward to this interview.
Me too. I'm so excited.
So I guess we'll just kind of start with the story behind Floss. For those not listening, Sam is the creator of the world's very first electric flosser called Floss. How did you get started with doing this?
It's a pretty interesting story. At the time, I was a big law M&A attorney working at a massive law firm, and I had a dentist appointment come up in my calendar. And at the time, I was an amazing twice-a-day electric toothbrush user, a very inconsistent flosser. So about a week leading up to the appointment, I started vigorously flossing, so that when I got in the dentist chair and my hygienist asked, "Have you been flossing?" my answer was yes. And obviously right away, she knew I had not been flossing. I ended up with the classic lecture, coming home with a massive dental bill. And I thought to myself, I hate flossing. I hate putting my fingers in my mouth, how tedious and difficult it is and painful. But I love using my electric toothbrush. Why don't I just go buy an electric flosser? It could do it for me. And when I went online to go buy one, this was in 2019, I was shocked to discover nothing like this existed. When you looked up electric flosser, the only thing that came up was a water flosser or an air flosser. And it just shocked me that there was nothing like a vibrating floss pick. And so over the course of the following weeks, I started talking to my friends and my colleagues at the firm and asking them about their flossing habits, assuming I shamefully was the only one not flossing. And that's when I realized that hardly anyone was flossing, and we're all not flossing for the same reason. So that was really my light bulb moment.
I've said this on the podcast before, but I love it when people have a personal experience with something and then they realize that they can fill a need. And clearly when you Googled and realized there was nothing, you're like, oh my God, I think I might do this.
I've always been extremely entrepreneurial. I've always been founding things and creating things. Never in a million years did I think it was going to be an oral care. And this just plopped right into my lap. And I truly feel throughout my whole journey, Floss is meant to exist in the world. This is meant to be a category, just like the water flosser market, the electric toothbrush market. And if it wasn't going to be me, it was going to be someone else. And so getting to leave the law firm job, and this is why I just respect dental professionals so much, of getting to help people take care of themselves. And we work with a lot of senior customers, geriatric community, and allowing them to feel independence and self-care has been so extremely rewarding. And yeah, we like to say that Floss was invented by a patient, designed with dentists for patients.
That's awesome. So you have a very unique perspective. I'm sure that it was challenging being a non-dental person coming into dental because it's a whole nother world. I just think of myself trying to do something in law. Like I'd be like, I'm lost. But you have that perspective as a consumer. And so what issues did you see with like traditional flossing or the options that we have? And then how does Floss solve those?
Yeah, so with traditional flossing, let's just focus, I guess, on string floss and floss picks. Obviously, there's water flossers. What I've found through all my research over the years is that water flossers it's a much smaller segment of the customer demographics, and it typically skews a lot older, and it makes sense. It's an accessible device. So that's why the demographics who do typically use a water flosser are a bit older. When it comes to millennials like me, or even let's say Gen Z, who are really starting to get into this habit, starting to have more of those dental appointments where it's like, you need to start taking your gum health and teeth health seriously. It's really between traditional flossing and floss picks. And both of those methods require a lot of dexterity, which is actually makes traditional flossing physically impossible for a huge subset of the population. But then shoving your fingers in your mouth, I came up with this idea in 2019, and then 2020 hit, and there was so much more awareness about the amount of bacteria that live and exist on our fingers and our hands. And to think that everyone is washing their hands prior to flossing is, most people don't even wash their hands after they go to the bathroom. So as you can imagine, it's a pretty gross activity. And then it's nearly impossible to reach your molars, which is the number one location for cavities and then root canals. And also just takes so much time and it's difficult to do. So all of those things were all the pain points that I was suffering from and why I wasn't flossing, but I was a diligent electric toothbrush user. And so my thought was, okay, if we take the logic of the technology behind an electric toothbrush and applied it to flossing, we could then solve all of those pain points. So how Floss works, this is the little packaging box. It's definitely super fun.
I love your marketing, by the way.
Thank you so much. So my vision for the brand is to create the oral beauty space. So if any of your listeners ever find us at a dental conference, please come find us because it is so fun. It's so bright. It's high energy. And we're trying to bring the allure and the fun that you see in traditional skincare and beauty like Glossier, Starface, into a very sterile, traditional category. And I wish you could feel the floss, but so Floss uses up to 18,000 sonic vibrations per minute. There's 3 speeds. And if you felt the floss, you would actually feel it vibrating like this in a left to right displacement motion. What that vibration does is it helps to wiggle the floss in between tight contacts, speeding up the process, helps to disrupt the biofilm and stimulate the gums. We actively hear from customers that they're seeing actual reductions in gum pocket sizes from that stimulation after using Floss for a number of months. And then this ergonomic handle allows you to easily access and clean your molars without ever placing your fingers in your mouth. So to the extent there's users out there who don't like flossing because their mouth's too small, their hands are too large, or anyone with a dexterity impairment like arthritis, Floss is an incredible accessibility device, and nearly 90% of our customers report flossing more regularly. So this is a compliance tool. I know there's some professionals that are like, I don't like the idea of having to reuse the head. With Floss, we have actually a bit more flexibility in the head prongs itself that allows you to create more of that around the tooth C shape than a traditional floss pick. And we only recommend using the head once per flossing session. We do not recommend reusing the head multiple times, spreading the bacteria. You're going to rinse underwater as you go like a toothbrush. And then when you're done, you just simply are going to press down on your countertop at home. I'll show you on the Floss packaging. It just pops right off like that.
Okay.
This is what the head looks like, and it's fully recyclable. So we have a free recycling program. It uses 30% less plastic than traditional floss picks. And yeah, it's just been a game changer. We have almost 100,000 customers and 90% report flossing more. So this is like a huge revolution and step forward in compliance, which is the number one issue with traditional flossing.
So if we look at studies comparing a water flosser to traditional floss, like does it work better? Technically, I don't think it does. However, there's a caveat that patients are not using traditional floss correctly.
Right.
And so it's like usually the numbers do look better with a water pick because of the compliance issue. So
Absolutely.
With Floss, because technically when we're flossing, we're trying to wrap the floss right around the sides of the teeth. So is that still what you recommend, like having that technique?
Yes,
okay,
absolutely. And so again, once you're applying pressure to the floss, there is a bit of like slack by design to allow you to create more of that C shape around the tooth. So you're going to continue to go around the tooth, both in a Y shape up and down the side of the teeth and into the gum line. And then as you're pulling around the tooth, the device is like scraping the side like this.
Okay.
So again, it's just like an electric toothbrush, you still are maneuvering it, but it's giving you a floss assist. And most customers have tight teeth and very crowded teeth, and those vibrations help to wiggle the floss in between those tight contacts so you don't have any of that whiplash that occurs. And it just makes it overall a more enjoyable, comfortable experience. So therefore, you're more likely to do it.
I was going to ask that too, because my boyfriend actually uses those floss picks, and
Yes.
I swear he's in a race. Every time he's doing it, it's like as quick as possible. I'm like, no, there's a technique to it.
Yes.
He actually has very tight teeth. So with yours, I was wondering if the vibration kind of helps the floss wiggle down in there.
Exactly. That's exactly what it does. It also helps wiggle it out because, again, like when you have that whiplash that occurs, that's when you can potentially lacerate the gums. But we definitely do not recommend people just race through their mouth. It does speed up the process, but overall, it can be what is typically a 5-minute experience can be truncated down to about a 2-minute or a minute and a half experience. And it's also quiet and beautifully designed. It's also waterproof. So if you're someone, in terms of like habit stacking, if you're someone that is a shower brusher, you're therefore likely to be a shower flosser. So that was really important for us to make sure that the device was waterproof. It's beautiful. It's quiet because a lot of people like to sit on their couch and floss. And so we really took all of that customer feedback into account when designing this product. It's very intentionally designed. And if any of your listeners even buy a Floss, not only will you see that intentional design in the product, but also even the packaging itself. Like we have Braille all throughout our boxes because we have a large blind audience. And so everything's like very intentionally done. And I think that's what's led to the success of the product.
Oh man, I didn't realize there was Braille.
Yep.
I love that. And I wanted to mention too, when I've looked at your just online or on Instagram or whatever, I'm like, it's like they're trying to make the oral care routine as glamorous, right, as skincare or beauty.
Exactly.
And I really
oral
like
beauty.
that. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. So like we create these really cute oral beauty bags where we'll put not just like a floss in there, but also like really cute mouth tape, a lip scrub. I have like a little tooth gem. There's little things that we can do to help unify oral care with beauty. So people are feeling more incentivized to want to take care of themselves, because if we have a 5-step skincare routine and we're not taking care of our teeth, this is like front and center billboard of everything. And having good oral health has been directly linked to our confidence. So I think getting people in the habit of using the device, and I like to say it's like the gateway floss. We get your patients in and using it, and then they want to advance from there. Maybe they want to go try a Cocoa Floss string, or they want to go to another, whatever it is, they can go do that. But we have to start with the first step of actually getting them in the habit of flossing in general, and Floss is an amazing tool for that.
Yeah, I was thinking when you were first talking about the product, I thought that too. I was like, this could be a gateway to traditional flossing, you know,
absolutely.
if they really want to dedicate to that.
Exactly. And that's one of our strategies just as a brand, is continuing to innovate and have future product roadmap and have different types of floss heads, coming out with an orthodontic head for people with braces and permanent retainers. And maybe it's a double stringed floss head, and just coming up with other ways that we can continue to advance and help like serve all these different customer segments. Because as you know, every mouth, every tooth is so unique. You can't really build a like one size fits all product.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about future products. You already
Yes.
mentioned the ortho. Do you have like a kids flosser?
Yeah, so that's right on our roadmap
Okay.
of future product innovation is going into kids. So it's a smaller, it's still electric flosser, but a smaller form factor size of the device. And I think it could also probably double as a nice like travel size, something you just like slip into your purse. But the thought process is that these habits form when you're really, really young. I wasn't a flosser as an adult because I wasn't flosser as a kid. And so getting this into the hands of as many kids as possible. Right now, Floss as is already works great for kids. So we recommend Floss for kids 7 and up. We are going to come out with a smaller form size still to be able to serve our like youngest customers. For any kids younger than 7, we require parent supervision. But what's great about Floss is for any potential caretakers, someone very close to me, their father has ALS and his nurse, he's fully paralyzed, his nurse uses this. And so this is great with little kids and parents because then your fingers are not going into their mouths where they bite down, whatever can get a little crazy during getting ready for bedtime. And so Floss is super great for parents with young children, and then more into like the 7-year-olds up to the 10-year-olds to the teenagers. They love Floss because it makes flossing fun.
Yeah.
I think it's both the color. It comes in black, pink, and white. The pink is like, I'm obsessed with it. And the white's really nice too. But I think like it's soft touch silicone. It's fun. It feels nice in your hand. It's not like aggressive. That it makes flossing fun. And kids like that like physical like stimulation. And I think once we go further into kids, there's a lot more opportunities to incorporate more fun elements into the device that I'm so excited to explore.
Well, and kids too, I guess adults also, but kids in particular, they love tech stuff, and that's very techy.
Very techy. So you mentioned like how has it been coming in as a non-dental professional? So I think it's a huge advantage, to be honest. So when you look at some of the most popular oral care brands, Waterpik, Philips Sonicare, those were both patient invented, and they went and got dental professionals. We now have thousands of dental professionals who help us. But as soon as I came up with the idea, I was like, what are the 2 skill sets I need to start this company? 1, a dentist, and 2, an engineer. So I got 2 dentists to come on board. One was a cosmetic dentist. The other one is a dental surgeon who does implants. And I got both of them to come on board and help me build and design the product, the company, do all the user testing. And then I obviously found an engineer too. And I think having this like outside perspective and getting to look in, because in the dental professionals, like you guys are trying to serve these end patients. And I am someone who's had this exact experience, this exact pain point. And when I tell people my story and my experience, the number of people who are like, I have had that I have been in that chair. I have lied to my hygienist. And it's like, let's remove the shame of it. Let's admit this happens. We're all a little bit tad liars at the dentist, and that's okay. But it's never too late to start flossing and taking care of yourself now.
Yeah, no, the perspective of a patient is huge because dentistry, like, especially if we've been practicing a while, sometimes we forget that what the average Joe thinks of flossing or brushing or whatever. So have you had some, like, I don't know, criticisms or whatever, being like, she's a lawyer, like what's she doing designing a flosser?
I would say for the most part, everyone has been so extremely supportive. I think everyone's just amazed, like, wow. And some people might even feel inspired that they could go and, as you said, like, go start their own law startup. Like, we don't need to be confined to the boundaries of what we think is possible. But I would say, like, yeah, I've been received that criticism, if I want to say criticism before. But yeah, my vocation may have been law, but at the end of the day, I'm a patient. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, yeah, I was a patient who invented this. And again, looking at Waterpik and Philips, it's so common. But that's why I immediately needed to get dental professionals involved, because I wanted to create something that did have efficacy, that did have credibility. And I'm the first to admit what I do not know. And I have loved getting to learn in this space. And I'm just a sponge soaking up knowledge. We're putting nanohydroxyapatite in our floss heads. And one of our dental ambassadors a couple weeks ago at the Boston Dental Show was like, just make sure you're figuring out what the shape is. And I was like, well, what do you mean? She's like, there are studies that like it needs to be rod shaped and not needle shaped, because needle can slip through, end up in your brain. It's been outlawed in the EU. I took that little nugget, went straight to our engineers, and I was like, we need to run these tests. Turns out the nanohydroxyapatite we were going to use was needle shaped. And I was
Okay.
like, okay, we have to move away from that. Let's go towards broad. And so I just love learning. I'm so curious, and I have so much respect for the dental professional community that everyone's been so extremely friendly. But again, I think it's an advantage. So for example, when I was starting Floss, one of the questions I had is, why are we told to use 18 inches of floss? Where did that come from? And I was going online trying to look up clinical studies, because in my mind, I'm like, I don't understand the logic behind that when we're using the same toothbrush bristles over and over again for 3 months at a time. Mm-hmm. And so when I went to go look it up, there are no studies on it. And I would challenge any of your listeners to present one, because I have not been able to find any. And when I've gone to all of our dental professionals, it's just something that's been taught in dental school and dental hygiene school, passed down. And it makes sense why when floss was invented in, I think it was like 1892 or 1862, it makes sense back then why you needed to use a fresh piece of floss. We didn't have antibiotics. There was a lot of bloodborne illnesses. You were also doing it with horsehair at the time. But that's just something that's been passed forward with no empirical evidence. And if anything, it just leads to more waste. Traditional floss is very wasteful. And I don't know, sometimes I'm like, is it just to sell more product? And I think being up on the patient side, I'm able to question the status quo a little bit easier than someone where like it's been hammered home into my brain, 18 inches, 18 inches.
That's really interesting you say that, because as
Yeah.
you were talking about it, I'm like, wait, why do we do that?
No,
Like,
I know.
I was taught that. I don't know why.
I was taught that.
I also love that you put nano-hydroxyapatite on the floss. I've done 2 episodes up to this point about nano, and I think that it's the future. So that, I mean, you're already ahead of the
I'm
curve.
so excited. That and xylitol.
Yeah.
We're just so excited. And again, it's just about serving as many customers as we can to make flossing as enjoyable of an experience as possible. And so much goes into the product and testing. Like, there is at no point where I'm just making the decisions because I feel like that. Everything's based on tons and tons of customer research, focus groups. I'm constantly engaging with our customers to try new products, because I want, I have one shot at this and I want to make the best product possible. And at the end of the day, you need to be serving customers. So even getting Floss to where it's at now required hundreds of prototypes. I mean, it was in the middle of COVID, and I'm running around trying to get random people to put Floss in their mouth, and they're like, "Get away from me, crazy
You're like, trust
lady."
me, it's fine.
yeah, it's fine. Like, I literally had $10 Starbucks gift cards. I'm walking around Manhattan Beach, California, where I lived at the time, going up to people on the Strand being like, "Hey, will you test this out?" And everyone was like, "Absolutely not." So at that point, I knew I had to go to friends and family who like trust that I'm not. And we drove all around LA, and I was like, "Is this going to be a super spreader event?" But now that time has passed, we do a lot of like customer focus groups with people who are not only happy customers, people who are unhappy customers, and then people who are not customers at all. Because you want to make sure that you don't bias your results. Mm-hmm. And so it's really important that you get as much customer data and then you analyze it. So I actually have a professional customer researcher to make sure that like even the ways you're asking the questions is so important, because you could be biasing people or leading them with your questions. So I do everything by the book, and I'm so excited for our future product roadmap, because all of it's based on products and features that our customers are desperate to see.
I just love how open you are. It takes a level of like humility, right? To be open,
definitely.
especially with something in a field that you're not in.
No.
Well, you are now, but you weren't before.
I'm not. People think I'm a dental hygienist. I'm like,
bet.
no.
Yeah. You're like, actually.
No.
But what are some other examples of adjustments or changes that you've made to the product from the consumer side, but also from the dental side?
A big one that we made early on was initially our technology had a different sort of motor that created like a more aggressive seesawing motion. And that was actually we modified that to a motor that it still goes left to right, but it's more in like a centrifugal circular motion. So it creates more of a massaging effect and is a less like aggressive. That was based on dental professional feedback. That was like when they were sampling the product and we had so many of them trying the different motors, it was like almost unanimous. It was like 95% to 5% of a preference for that sort of vibration in terms of like its effectiveness, the way that I was impacting the gums, because so much of oral health is gum health. So you don't want something that's super abrasive and aggressive that's going to be damaging to the gums. And so that was a huge pivot in terms of like product design. And then on the customer side, an interesting one is, so when I launched Floss, and this is for any of your listeners who are interested in starting a consumer product, is you want to go out with it's called your MVP, your minimum viable product. So it's like, it doesn't have any bells and whistles. You don't need to be throwing on like a tongue scraper or something else. Like you want everything to be very focused on the core problem you're trying to solve. And for me, it was like being the best electric flosser possible and making flossing as easy as possible. And so as you're doing that, one of the questions that came up was, what type of floss do we want to use in the product? So initially, we start off with just what was going to be the most popular floss on the market, which is a gliding floss. Obviously, there's a tons of different concerns with gliding floss. Ours is PFA, PFO free, even though it is a PTFE, which was really, really important to me because I have been following the forever chemical debate for years and years. Ever since I started the company, I've been aware of this going on. But we started with that intentionally because it was the most popular. So we knew that, if we could serve 80% of our customers, awesome. What we found is that there's about 20% of customers that have really tight contacts or prefer a more aggressive scrub. So we've been actively in the last year working on coming out with our woven floss, which I'm so excited. We're going to be launching in the beginning or in the mid of April. And it's been over a year in the works. And that's based on a ton of customer feedback. So they sampled different types of floss, like textures, different sizes. And it was over like a month-long period. We ran a super intensive focus group. And now we've honed into like, what sort of coating do we want? Is it coconut oil? Is it beeswax? Is it whatever it is? And also identifying the flavors, the coating of the xylitol and the nanohydroxyapatite, little things like that. And that has been all based on customer feedback, because while 80% of our customers are happy with this glide floss, we want to be also serving this other 20% of customers. And also, I would say that about 80% of dental professionals prefer that woven floss as opposed to glide floss because it just glides over stuff. And so we're just so excited to launch that. But when you're starting a company, you don't want to do too many things at once, right? Because you're just trying to perfect the one thing at a time before you move on to the next thing.
That makes sense. I feel like you're talking about things that I've already had in my head. I'm like, it would be great if there was a woven alternative, So with the woven, is that going to be a plastic-free floss then?
Yes.
Okay.
Plastic-free floss.
Awesome.
Yes. So I'm super excited. It's a plastic-free floss. It uses 450 strands. It's so high strength. It's very taut. It has less flexibility than the gliding floss in terms of creating more of that C shape just because it is so taut. But it is such an exciting advancement and improvement for us. And we're so excited to be able to offer these options to customers and then offer even more down the road. But yeah, that has been something we looked into. And then another one we did look into, like thinking about like, could we potentially partner with Coco Floss and do Coco Flaus, which I'm still manifesting Coco Flaus, so cute. But the issue with their floss is it expands. And so it's not something you could reuse between multiple teeth because it is expanding. And so it loses its integrity. And then also what happens when you have like a floss pick, in order to make the heads, it goes into a really hot tool, a mold. And it's like basically almost like a Belgian waffle maker. So like if you can imagine the two sides of the head, the floss is strung through and it goes like this, it clamps down. The material that Coco Floss uses burns. And so it just like rips apart. So we weren't able to like advance that one. And so we had to make sure we're using material that can like withhold the heat and the pressure that happens in a floss pick head. But again, these are like very technical considerations, but that's why it's taken us over a year. Like we have been so hard at work at this, and I didn't want to launch anything until I felt extremely confident. And my boyfriend now just uses the woven heads and he's like, it's like 100 times better. He just loves it. And he is one of those people that works for him. And then for me, I prefer this other type. And yeah, so I'm so excited.
Well, it's great to have options, especially, I mean, this conversation about freaking microplastics, it's only going to get louder.
Absolutely.
That's a topic for another podcast. That totally freaks me out. So I feel like you're ahead of the curve because more and more people are going to be searching for plastic-free alternatives.
I mean, it's just interesting though, because obviously there's so much microplastics, like even in our water, like the water you're using to brush your teeth and the water you're using to even rinse off this floss. There's just so much microplastics it's everywhere. And so we are trying to do what we can to minimize anyone's consumption of it. And I think that there's a lot of room in floss itself for innovation, the material. And I think that that's an exciting space to be in too and thinking about.
Yeah, and it's going to be great for us too as dental clinicians to be able to offer options to our patients and be like, well, this glide one probably is going to work better for you, or you can handle the woven one. Let's do that. I want to talk about your eco-friendliness of Floss and your recycling program. Whenever I go to the store, or honestly, wherever, I swear to God, I see those floss picks everywhere on the ground, which I'm like, at least they're flossing, I guess, but also stop littering. So what is your program?
Yeah, that is so funny. I feel the same way. Sometimes when I used to go to the beach in California, I would see floss picks. I'm like, who is flossing here? Who is flossing at the beach right now? It's like, and then it's just, something I've learned on my journey of creating Floss is how wasteful and harmful to the environment traditional floss is, both floss string and floss picks. The reason for that is that these items, well, one with floss picks, they're usually mixed material. So if you send them to your local recycling facility, they're unable to process them. But both for floss string and floss picks, they're so little. And because they're so little, they're oftentimes able to slip through the sorting and the processing at these local waste management facilities. They therefore end up in our landfills, in our oceans, and our sea animals, particularly floss string. Very common for that to end up in the ocean and in sea animals. So that was a huge consideration I had when building Floss. So one, our heads are made with recyclable plastic. Two, they use 30% less plastic than traditional floss picks, which was very intentional of our design. And three, we offer a free recycling program where the floss heads are taken back and they actually go to a dedicated oral care waste management facility that specializes in small items like these floss heads, as well as mixed materials. So they'll take the time to separate the materials and make sure they're both properly processed. As a startup, unfortunately, you can't accomplish everything, and there's so many more sustainability goals I have, such as making our product device more of like a circular economy where perhaps we recycle those floss heads, we melt down that plastic, and then we reuse it. I think that that's an awesome opportunity for us. And then also our handle is reusable. So this should be living for at least multiple years. This should not be something that you're throwing out, you're discarding. We have a rechargeable battery, so you're not dealing with AA, AAA batteries that are horrible for the environment. And then whenever you are prepared to discard the device, we give everyone instructions on how to properly discard the device and get it recycled. So that typically involves like recycling it and giving it to somewhere at like a Home Depot or a Best Buy or TBT to Radio Shack, something like that, where they will handle products that have a lithium ion battery in it. But that being said, as a startup, there's always ways to improve. And that's something that's on my agenda in terms of like product development and even our operations and logistics of how can we continue to push the boundaries of being more sustainable. I also want to mention too, our packaging. While we definitely have like an Apple-esque unboxing experience, but there's some really nice little elements in here. There's no plastic aside from the bag in which this is in, which we hope that you'll keep and use and then send back your used heads in here so it's reusable. But there's no plastic in here. And that was, again, very intentionally done to try to have as sustainable of an unboxing experience as possible.
I think it's great that you're keeping your eye on that for sure. You and Floss have been in the press a lot. Like let me just read this off. I wrote it down. You've been on Shark Tank, which I want to hear about that. But you also, I saw were mentioned in Time Magazine, Oprah, Goop. You've been on the Kelly and Mark show. So like, what has all that been like?
Shark Tank was amazing. That was like a dream come true. It was surreal as it was happening, but also just everything that's happening, I think it's just a signal that this is a category that's meant to exist in the world, and this is a product that's meant to create and lead that category. And so it's all happening so organically. It's not like we're pushing for any of these things. These opportunities are finding us, and then we're just taking advantage of them or are capitalizing on them. That's probably a better phrase. But it's also important to have this press because when you're creating a new category and of people being like, what the heck's an electric flosser? You need that, what's called top of funnel brand awareness. And that's what this press, being on Live with Kelly and Mark, Good Morning America, Shark Tank, we were, as you mentioned, Time's Best Inventions, all that does is create more brand awareness of this category. And then it also lends credibility as well. Like being on Shark Tank, they do such deep diligence into the product, into the category. They're fact checking everything you're saying, because you just can't go on TV and say a bunch of lies.
Yeah.
And so it just lends so much credibility to have that stamp of approval. And, you know, I ended up getting my deal with Candace Nelson, the founder of Sprinkles, and just even having her involved in the weight that carries, it's amazing. And I don't know if we would have gotten as far as we have without those stamps of approval. So I'm so grateful and I'm honored. I'm like Time's Best Inventions of the Year. Like, and this was just an idea that was out of like, it's so surreal, but yeah, it just feels like it's meant to be. Like I'm not, Floss is meant to exist in the world, and I'm just simply like the vessel doing it. And so it's been amazing, but I don't tend to like focus so much on like the awards and stuff. I think it's a really nice, and we do try to capitalize on it, but I'm way more focused on like serving the end customer and trying to make the best product possible.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what it's about at the end of the day.
That's what it's about.
What is this with Candace Nelson and Sprinkles?
Yeah. So she was my shark. So on Shark Tank, I was on the season finale last year. Everyone should go check it out. It was season 15, episode 22. I was closing pitch. I ended up having a bidding war between Mr. Wonderful, Candace Nelson, she's the founder of Sprinkles Cupcakes. She was the guest shark, and then Damon John. And I ended up going with Candace. So I ended up getting a deal with her, and she's been so incredible. She's so into female empowerment, supporting other women. Sprinkles is like an iconic brand. I used to eat that all the time growing up. And I was like, how perfect to the synergy. We get them with the Sprinkles Cupcakes, we get them with the cavities, and we get them using Floss. Like it's,
it's like
full funnel exactly, full circle marketing. And so, yeah, and she's just been so wonderful and helpful. And yeah, hopefully next year I'll get to be on like one of the Shark Tank company updates of where they're at now.
Oh man, that would be so cool.
Yes.
I knew that name. So I'm into
Yes.
baking, and I love baking shows, and she's been on a lot of
Yes.
baking shows. Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh my God. I love those. Yes. I Cupcake Wars.
Yes.
Is that the one?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's on it, and she's so nice. And so is her husband. And they're like a dual team effort, and super supportive. I'm hiring right now quite a few people, and they've been helping me with that too, just because they've had multiple successful ventures, and I'm a first-time founder. I'm, again, being a sponge, just being curious and learning. And that's one of my big tips when I'm talking to like aspiring founders is look at someone who's walked your path before you and get advice from them, not only on the things that they did right, but also all the things they did wrong, because there's so much learning in the failures. And you realize you don't have to reinvent the wheel for a lot of this stuff. You just have to figure out like what's behind the next corner.
Yeah. Being a sponge and being open and being
Yes.
just willing to pivot
ego-free.
too.
Willing to pivot. And
Yeah.
and so many founders, I think, have a lot of ego with what they're building of like, oh, this was my idea. So they hold on really tight to it. I just follow the data. Wherever the data points me is where I'm going. And it needs to be a totally ego-free experience. And I really feel like that helps. It just helps remove that extra like layer of bias that might exist exactly when you need to pivot. Just like you said, Stephanie.
Yeah. And it happens all the time. So with being a founder, and especially of something brand new, like the first electric flosser, there's challenges with that you've already mentioned, but also I would imagine that you have to deal with copycats too. So how do you deal with that?
It's interesting. We definitely have a copycat, and then we've had a couple more. Ever since I aired on Shark Tank, we had like some like Chinese knockoffs pop up on Amazon, which I know one that some people recommend. It seems like some people like one of them, but they are fully a Chinese ripoff company, which I don't know if some dental professionals realize, which is just kind of par for the course. So I actually reached out to one of my investors. He's the founder of Yeti, Roy. He's actually, their fund is my lead investor. And I was chatting to him because I'm so competitive. I'm like, I want to win. I want to like crush. I'm like feeling like people are ripping me off, taking my ideas, and like, it's hard to watch because this is my baby and I have sacrificed. I left a very prestigious legal career and drained my savings to do, like I've sacrificed everything I can for this. And what's been so fascinating is the perspective of people who have done this before and have won. And it totally shifted my perspective of, as a category creator, which is so obvious of what I'm doing, you will never be a category of one. And I can't be operating from this absolute like zero sum mindset where it's only one person can win. Look at the electric toothbrush market. It is beyond hyper-saturated. Copycats left and right. And Philips Sonicare is still a multi-billion-dollar business. And so at the end of the day, just focusing on making the best product. I don't need to be the best 3-in-1 product. I'm the best electric flosser. And that's what I'm focused on doing. And so recognizing that competition is part of it. And it's actually a good sign. It's a good signal that this is creating more awareness, more validity in the category, and a rising tide lifts all boats. So I have actually shifted my perspective towards that. And it's a much healthier growth mindset than being in the like zero sum mindset where, yeah, you don't have an abundance mentality. And that's what you need, because there's enough room. That's the biggest secret to all of this. There's enough room at the top for all of us. And it's only us creating these restrictions. So once you kind of release yourself, and then, yeah, I mean, also some of these knockoffs, it's like, I think it's good because people will try it and might not work out. And then they'll be more open to trying like the very like credible device. And so we've seen a lot of people come over to ours, but again, just kind of par for the course.
Yeah. And I just hope that people, if they are buying a knockoff, that they know it's a knockoff. I would just get worried that they buy some like piece of crap and it's a piece of crap. And then they just think that electric flossers are also just all a piece of crap,
Exactly. And so that is definitely like a battle we're going to have to go up against. But again, that's in every field. It's like that. And so you mentioned, I think one of the things I wanted to mention too is like going out for our own clinical studies, which we've been doing in the process of. I think that's going to really help once we actually have clinical studies behind us, because right now we just say Flaus makes flossing easier, quicker, more comfortable, so you're more likely to do it. We aren't necessarily making efficacy claims yet. However, I'm very confident that we will get to start making those. And as soon as we start having that credibility and eventually the ADA seal of acceptance, I think it just, especially for professionals, that will kind of help cut through the noise.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. That was a question I wanted to ask too, was about the efficacy of like it versus traditional floss or whatever.
Yes.
I can assume the compliance is probably going to be higher for sure.
Huge. Compliance is going to be huge. I mean, that's something we actively already like survey customers on. It's going to be great to see the potential reduction in gum pocket sizes we are anecdotally hearing about. But the reason we're so confident in what will be the results we believe of these clinical trials is because it's the same technological benefit that's been applied to toothbrushes. The benefits of why someone would go from a manual toothbrush to an electric toothbrush, that logic should apply here as well. So preliminarily, that's what we're seeing. But once we have like those final results, I'll definitely share those with you. And we're going to be so excited to start actually making those claims. Because again, we're very careful. Like we're not running around saying this is more effective. We hope to start saying that, but without clinical trials, you could get into like serious trouble for making any sort of claims like that.
Yeah. And I feel like some people just do anyway. So I appreciate your integrity around that.
Absolutely. There are people within the space that definitely do that. And it's, I mean, again, I think consumers are just so savvy now. They're so savvy. I mean, that's why we've seen the rise and the fall of even like the influencer economy. It stays for like a year, and then people are just so savvy that they know that they're being sold to. And so now we have everything with Google and AI at our fingertips. Everyone's doing the research too of like to figure it out. And so I have enough faith in the like consumers and the professionals to kind of like wade through it.
Well said. So before we wrap up, if a dental office or clinician or whatever wants to learn more about you, or maybe even like carry Flaus in their office, how do they do that?
There's two primary ways that we like to work with dental offices. First, I'll say that we love to do lunch and learn. So if anyone is interested, we'd love to host a lunch and learn at your office. I am based in New York City. So if anyone's in New York, I can definitely come to you, or in the surrounding tri-state area. But there's two ways we work with dental offices. One is an ambassador model. So we will give you a Flaus demo device. We'll also give you a QR code. And as you're talking to your patients, and all of them unfortunately are lying to you about not flossing, you can ideally show them Flaus. Yeah, exactly. And then they can scan the QR code. Those patients will get a discount on their purchase. And then the hygienist or the office can also get a little bit of like an affiliate reward for helping us recommend the product.
Okay.
And then the other option is selling directly into the offices. So we do wholesale. It's great price to buy directly in, and then the offices can mark up as you see fit. So we're in dozens of dental offices, and they kind of choose either models. Some people don't like to carry the inventory, and some people prefer like the burst-esque ambassador model. But we have also others that love to carry the inventory. And then, for the holidays, it's a great Christmas gift. And so we have quite a few professional offices that will carry it for that.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to put the links to all of that down in the show notes.
Yes.
And I can only imagine, like, because your packaging is so cute that, like,
Yes,
it's going to look
so
cute
fun.
at any dental office. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And people are like, whoa, what is that? What's going Yeah, exactly. And we've also come out with really fun little accessories. So we have like a mirror mount, and that's great for anyone that lacks like countertop space. So like young professionals, kids, and it helps sit the flouse either right on their mirror or on their shower tile. So it serves again as a visual cue. This is like, because most traditional floss you throw away into your cabinet until you have to pull it back out again. Yeah. And then we also just came out with our travel case too. So, and you're able to put your floss heads, the device, some ancillary oral care items in there. And so we have also some fun little ancillaries that maybe could be used as like a reward. If your patients come back for their 3-month or 6-month cleaning, they can get that as a little freebie.
Oh my gosh, you've like thought of everything. I'm really
well, that's
excited.
Only through the dental professionals. They are the ones telling us all this. And so again, we're just learning.
That's awesome. I'm just really excited even like to check back in a year to see, because I feel like you have just blown up. And obviously I know a lot of us will be really interested to see any studies that come out too.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Sam. I'm really excited for you. And I have a lot of respect for you for jumping into a field that you didn't know anything about, and you're killing it.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was such a pleasure and an honor. And yeah, I'm so excited to stay in touch. And yeah, we should definitely like regroup in a year and see where this journey has taken us, because I think the next year is going to be bright.
It definitely. Awesome. Well, I'll put all of your contact information down in the show notes. Thank you again. And thank you everyone for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.